We're presently experiencing cold weather, and we're anticipating that we're going to see some snow here over the weekend, perhaps even some accumulations. Here to report what the city's been doing and plans to do in response. Our planning efforts started even before the cold weather by making sure that our salt stores were topped off, that we had enough salt and sand. And we also went through our fleet and made sure that all of our equipment was ready and that staff was available to respond. Since Wednesday, we've been putting down a brine solution on our streets to prevent icing on particularly those areas that are problem areas, elevated roads, intersections, and hills. And we will be monitoring the weather through the weekend. If we should see some accumulation of snow, we have up to 50 trucks with plows and sanders ready to respond. Depending on how much it actually accumulates and at what rate, we may apply just sand and salt, or we may also plow. And so you'll see some trucks out on the streets probably this weekend, and then we'll respond with the conditions that we see. So we would urge everybody to be patient, to know that the trucks are going to be out on the roads, and to plan their trips accordingly. And I think PD is going to provide some safe driving trips, and I'm available for any questions.
There was a lot of sand that was put down, a lot of salt put down last wintry season that we had. How much of that was picked up? I know there was talks of picking it back up and then so it can be reused later. How much was picked up?
Well, we picked up the sand that we put down. There are still some places that we're finding that we need to go out and pick up sand, but for the bulk of it was picked up. It was an extraordinary amount of sand that was put down, and it was because we had extraordinary weather conditions. As you may recall, we had a lot of snow come down very quickly, and then we had a very cold spell where the temperatures were both very cold, and it lasted for a long time. And so what we did was to try to keep the roads as safe and travelable as possible. We put down a lot of sand. So it took a lot of effort to pick that sand back up. We were able to reuse some of it, but not as much as we had hoped. And I haven't got the numbers.
Alan, does this concern you that, first of all, let me ask you this, is this pretty early for you guys to be already having to put down brine?
No, we put down brine as a precaution, even if we don't expect a precipitation, just if we are concerned about condensation on the roads and the formation of ice. That's why we put it only in certain areas that are kind of known trouble spots. Elevated roads, for example, they'll get some icing on them, and this is really to prevent the ice from occurring. And we can get that pretty early in the season during a typical winter, if there is such a thing.
So this isn't anything unusual?
Correct.
Now, if it gets really bad, will outside crews be called in to help?
Well, we do have a couple of contractors that do help us in the downtown area. Really, though, we rely on our own fleet. We have been looking at the possibility of setting up some contract services with others, and have been able to put any of those into place as of yet.
And I know last year, I guess, sand was put out late, and so it kind of packed up the snow. I guess what are we doing a little bit differently this year to prevent like the snow just packing up and creating other traffic issues?
Yeah, the snowpack that you're talking about was really a function of the conditions, the weather conditions. Normally, that doesn't happen with the kind of equipment and the approach that we use, but it was an unusual set of circumstances with a very heavy snowfall. A lot of snow came down, more than 8 inches in about 8 hours. It takes us about 24 hours to plow our approximately 1,500 lane miles of snow priority routes. So as you can see, in 24 hours you've plowed an area, and then you've got quite a bit of time for the snow to come down and accumulate behind you. We weren't able to get all the snow up off the road. That's usually not a problem. We come back a second time and a third time and remove the snow. But following immediately after the heavy snowfall, we had, as you might recall, very cold temperatures, and the snow packed down, and so our plowing was much less effective. And so what we did was we put a lot of sand down to make sure that that surface had some traction to protect people as they traveled.
Sand was at a premium at the end of the winter season last year. Do you anticipate any delivery problems if we do have a lot of storms throughout the course of this season?
Yeah, you're right. The salt sand mix was at a premium primarily because of the shortage of salt. Sand's pretty easy to come by here locally, but there was some problems with the supply on salt. Fortunately, we were able to maintain the necessary levels to be able to get us all the way through the storm. It was really more a function of the cold weather. Salt becomes much less effective as the temperatures go lower and lower. We've got a lot of salt right now, about 16,000 tons of salt and the availability for salt sand mix right now in our storage. We figure about, with one pass through the city, we only use about 1,500 of those. So we can we can do 10 passes roughly through current stores that we have now. Different our salt, we will be winter topping off our salt stores, so we have the maximum amount that we can store at any one time.
How is the cost compared right now? I know when I spoke to Mr. Payton before, he was saying that salt prices are a little bit higher this year than they were last year.
Yeah, I don't have those numbers, but you're right. They are running a little bit higher, but it's well within the city's budgeted amount for snow and ice, our program.
There was some reference made to changes that are being made and how you do handle this. What changes would those be?
Well, probably first and foremost is what we're trying to do here today, and that is to communicate and help the people and that we serve be aware of what it is we're doing and why it is that what they're seeing. But the other part of it too is we're trying to look for ways to make our operation more efficient, particularly at shift change, so that we can get as fast of a removal of that snow as possible when we are anticipating very cold temperatures. We don't think that's the case this time because we're looking at fairly warm temperatures coming next week. So probably this will be a fairly short-lived event, and the roads will be bare probably sometime next week.
If we start getting snow, is there a point when you guys actually start putting down the salt and sand, or does it have to be at a certain accumulation?
It's based on a few things. One is what the expected temperature is going to be. Another is how much is accumulating, and then another is how fast it's accumulating. So we try to adjust our plan to make the best use of our resources, not only the salt and sand, but our trucks and our folks. Well, with that, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to PD.
Thanks. Thank you, sir. I've been asked to come forward and talk to you briefly about some safety tips for driving in the event that we should see some slick roads this weekend. One thing that the police department wants to remind folks is that speed is one of the biggest problems when your tires are unable to get traction on the road. When the salt and everything is put down on the roads, that is an outstanding way to increase the traction on your vehicle. But the reality is, as the freezing rain and snow accumulates on the roadways, you're going to lose traction regardless of what is being done to the roadways. One of the biggest problems we see is that folks tend to believe that because they can get their vehicle up to regular highway speeds, that it's safe and they can drive. And that is, to a point, may be true. You may be able to get your vehicle up to a highway speed when you're driving straight down the road. The problems occur when you have to change lanes, slow down, or make a turn. That is when your wheels are most likely to break traction, and that's when we'll see a lot of accidents that occur. Just because your vehicle may be a big four-wheel drive, it may have great tires on it, you may be the best driver in the world, you're driving amongst other people. And if those people change into your lanes and you are unable to bring your vehicle to a stop, then you are driving too fast for conditions. You can be stopped and you can be ticketed if you are driving recklessly or if you're driving too fast for conditions. And when I say too fast for conditions, that means you are unable to stop at a red light, you're unable to stop to avoid a collision, or you're unable to negotiate a curve or a turn. Basically what we like to say folks do is slow down. You don't need to get your vehicle up to full highway speed when the roads have no traction. Watch the traffic around you. If you see other vehicles starting to have problems, especially on the overpasses, the elevated roadways, take that as a clue and start slowing your vehicle down before you wind up in a guardrail. Basically, common sense plays into a lot of it. If you see ice particles accumulating on your windshield underneath your windshield wipers, slow down, because that means that the roadway is also accumulating that ice. Make sure that you get your windows clear completely so you can see if the windshield is covered, the back window is covered. This reduces your visibility. That will increase your chances of having a collision with another vehicle. So use some common sense, slow down, and avoid any other problems. It'll save you a lot of headaches in the long run. Any questions?
Are you guys gonna have any extra patrols out or anything tomorrow?
We do not generally increase our patrols due to we see an increase in our call load a lot of times that occurs when people are inside their homes, checking on family members and things like that. But as far as traffic goes, no, there's no provisions right now to put more officers on the street. However, watch commanders and supervisory personnel that are on duty have that ability to assign officers other duties if they see that there's a problem developing.
Joe, can you talk a little bit about ERP and, if and when you guys do decide if you need to?
The emergency accident reporting plan is implemented anytime that we start seeing our resources dwindling. We do have an obligation and a demand that we have to provide public safety. If we start seeing a lot of non-injury accidents occurring that's resulting in depletion of our resources, then the deputy chief or the duty chief that is on duty can make the decision to implement the emergency accident reporting plan. If that is placed into effect, the standard procedures of going to quick trips or substations and obtaining forms to fill out, which can be filed later, becomes available. The biggest thing is common sense need to prevail. If ERP is enacted, it'll be put out to the news media, they'll be broadcast to the public, and they'll know to follow the procedures that are set forth. And that information will be provided if that decision is made to enact ERP. But ERP isn't based just on the weather, it is based on the needs of our resources. Any other questions?
We talked about this being the first winter weather event of the season, and people, you've kind of covered some of it. What's your advice to people, though, that have not driven on this for however many months now, and you get out there and you just don't realize?
One of the things that we kind of joke about is that people seem to forget how to drive on the ice over the summer. The one advantage of living in Kansas is you do have all 4 seasons, and it changes on you. The biggest thing is slow down. And people just need to keep that in mind. And they also need to keep in mind that there are folks here who've just moved here who may not be as adept to driving on ice and maybe getting used to it. So just slow down and have some consideration for everybody around you. Get yourself there, get one piece.
The fact that this is occurring on a weekend, obviously traffic's going to be a lot lighter. Is that a plus for you guys?
Anytime traffic's lighter is a plus. Of course, if the roads really start to get bad, we strongly recommend you don't go anywhere. Stay home unless you absolutely have to get out. But yeah, I mean, that less traffic means less accidents.